Okay, hi there. Welcome to our video lecture for Topic 1, Understanding Childhood and Child Protection. One of the first things we do when we have a look at a topic is we reflect on our frameworks areas and what this topic is going to have in store for us in those areas. So here in the screen you can see I know my head's covering some bits and pieces of it, but you've got reflections on your own definitions of childhood and youth and reflections on the basis for valuing children and young people in the you section. So we're asking you there to think about what you think about these things. In the theory section, particularly looking at definitions of childhood and youth and giving you some kind of understanding of what we mean by child-focused approaches or child-centred approaches to youth work, and then how that relates to child protection as well. Practice, looking at child-focused approaches, so what that might mean for you in terms of skills that you might need to acquire or integrate into your pastoral conversation practice, and application of child-focused approaches to a case study, which we'll have a little bit of a look at the end. We probably won't go into too much detail of that in this little video lecture, but you can look at the written version of the topic and go into that into more detail yourself. And context, appreciation of the historical context of the development of notions of, children, child protection, child focus, all that kind of thing. So, kind of have a bit of a look at all that kind of stuff as we travel along through. The first thing we want to do is have a bit of a look at this idea of childhood, and I guess one of the things we want to remind ourselves, going back to some of the things we talked about in Cluster 1, was that childhood is not this concrete thing, or youth is not this kind of concrete definition or term or concept. That childhood, children, youth, young people, they're all socially constructed kind of ideas, and their meaning changes from time to time and from place to place. So childhood doesn't mean the same thing in every place, and doesn't mean the same thing in every time. So that's important, and that doesn't mean that there's not something solid for us to base these kind of concepts on, but it just means that anything that's solid, biology or development, these things that kind of everybody is kind of observing, are all interpreted through different cultural lenses, and so that means that people come to different conclusions about that, and then those different conclusions lead to different kind of practices that people take. But a good friend Wikipedia says about child. Child is generally a human between the stages of birth and puberty. Some vernacular definitions of a child include the fetus as being an unborn child. The legal definition of child generally refers to a minor, otherwise known as a person younger than the age of majority. Child may also describe the relationship with a parent or an authority figure. And then when we ask Wiki about childhood, what they say there is the term childhood is non-specific and can apply a varying range of years in human development. Developmentally, it refers to the period between infancy and adulthood. In common terms, childhood is considered to start from birth. Some consider that childhood is a concept of plain innocence, ends at adolescence. In many countries, there's an age of majority when childhood officially ends and a person legally becomes an adult. The age range is anywhere from 13 to 21, with 18 being the most common. So you get a little bit of childhood there, a little bit of youth, but you get the idea that there's a bit of developmental stuff, but a bit of cultural stuff, a bit of legal stuff, and certainly, as we saw way back in Cluster 1, the definitions can change depending on who you're talking to. Culture, time, even organisations. Some of these definitions change. I think historically, we can kind of say that there's been the rise of the child in the last 100 years. Also, actually, some commentators call the 20th century the century of the child, as we saw an amazing growth in rights and value and protection of children. So we see this kind of Western view, in a sense, that the children have become this dependent, kind of vulnerable. That childhood is a time of learning, and that there's a whole need for nurture and care in this area. And that hasn't always been the case. Some people say in the 16th and 17th century that children were just seen as little adults, so they weren't given that kind of specialness or status, as being special little things, precious little things that maybe we've seen. And some people argue against it. They say, no, that's not the case at all. You're making all that up. So it's kind of hard to know what really happened because, well, I don't know. I wasn't there. But yeah, interesting to see. I know in the 1970s we saw the increase of rights. I think in the 1980s we had the International Year of the Child. And then probably since the 1960s, moving into the last decades, we've seen this amazing increase of awareness into areas of child protection. And in the 1960s, C. Henry Kemp published a very famous kind of watershed kind of article, The Battered Child Syndrome. And that certainly led the way to understandings of child abuse, harm and neglect that we are well aware of today and covering in this course. So in the learning guide, there's a little activity there just says, well, we haven't always valued children. If we haven't done that, then why do we value and protect them now? What is it about the societal basis for our understanding of children that causes us to value them now, and how does this relate to this changing face of child protection practice? So we're not going to spend too much time on that, but just encourage you to reflect on that when you get the time to. In terms of the organisational and legal context for child protection, it's important to say that back in, I think, 1980 it was, Australia ratified the Convention of the Rights of the Child, United Nations Convention, which means that we actually have some international obligations now to put the perspective of children's rights that's expressed in that convention into practice in our domestic laws. So we have to, as a country, have to report back to the UN on our progress on that. So we have some responsibilities there. So things have changed for us there in the last little while, and we've kind of stepped up, been quite an active participant in that process over the last few decades. The other thing to say about children in Australia, apart from this big context that there's kind of an increasing awareness of them, a care for them, a sense of their rights and their value, and that they are the future, and all those kind of nice things. The other thing to say about childhood is that generally we could say that Australian children and young people are doing quite well. There are some more detailed kind of figures in the learning guide, but there are a few concerns you can read. There's some concerns in health around obesity or mental health issues, substance abuse injury, some specific health issues. I think there was like asthma and diabetes. There has certainly been an increase in abuse, harm and at risk of harm notifications and substantiation. So that's something that people are very concerned about. That Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids are overrepresented in every single area of disadvantage that there is. So while we might say generally children and young people are doing well, we could say that generally Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people are not doing well. Some of the statistics for some of these children in a range of areas are, on a par with some of the more countries who are considered to be third worldish or developing countries in the world. So that's a real concern. And in the area of child protection, as you're probably aware, that's particularly the case, or can be the case as well. One of the things a lot of the research has kind of uncovered, which is something that we already really suspected or knew anyway, was that the welfare of children is linked very, very closely to the quality of family life. So it's important for us to remember as we are seeking to think about what we mean about child protection, not just responding to disclosures and suspicions of harm, not at that kind of end of the spectrum where it's kind of intervention and treatment and response. I think in the end of the spectrum, looking at promotion of health, families, prevention of abuse and intervention, one of ideas that family is an area that we need to be thinking about and targeting attention. In the guide there, just aside there, it's not a one, but go to the website. I can just chat more about childhood pairing, some new ideas and stuff. And the third one, the modern child, that's a good have a bit of a look to kind of get your head around this discussion of what is childhood today, what does it mean, it hasn't meant. Yeah, there's a good thing, and again, that's optional. It's if you want to have that, you can pay that. One of the things to talk about is a topic, the idea of child-focused practice or child-centered practice. And in this approach, it's an approach to work with children and people that makes the right child or young person to make choices to relationship, communicate, and safe ways. It allows for them to think, experience, explore, question, and search for issues impact upon our own well-being. A good example of this kind of work can be this web kids skills. We recommend you go and have a bit of a look And that's where I'll give you a bit of example that looks like practice and process skills you could have used to make child-focused approach with young people. 4 main aims of child-focused approaches in terms of how the kind of approach relates to child protection are these things. There are cool time frames in the lives of children and young people. And excuse me. And that it's important that we address issues of harm in a child's life and in the life of problems. One, the 4 main themes. Child-focused approach. And the second is that the development needs of children and young people should be considered in planning of intervention strategies. Third one is that children and young people should be provided with appropriate opportunities to participate in aspects of protection intervention that affect. And fourthly, promote a collaborative approach to protection that particularly strengthen the network around and can contribute to their well-being. So I guess if you're a youth, we're going to take a child-focused approach to your work with young people. Then you're certainly be considering the views and opinions and view of a young person that you're working with. You're going to be taking into consideration what they think in terms of any kind of interventions that you're doing with them. You're going to be valuing family and their networks and see strengthen. That you're going to be kind of dealing with protective risk factors and looking for those appropriate time to be able to help them to intervene in any issues they might face, problems that will be coming up. So that it actually gets back a lot to, again, go back cluster when we looked at core values, youth, we looked at core values that was about quote, was the idea of the primary client, that the person, the primary client, that the one that working, it's one who interests we're particularly looking out. So that really is quite heavily, I guess, in the idea of a child-focused. The thing about child-focused approach, it talks about the right child to be involved, the right child to decision. It really fits in with this kind of ideas of the invention of lots of the coaches, children's rights, those kind of things. So one of the things to say about in terms of protection, about in conversations or in discussions or in rings about children's rights, you come up to kind of not opposing view, but interrelated kind of views about children's rights. One is the idea of, it's in the best interest of the child in a sense. You almost get the idea that someone else is deciding in the best interests of the child or young person. So rights are often understood in a way that we youth wasn't that we, the government of the country or the organisation, working to what we think are the best interests of children and young people. It's an important thing to understand when we talk about rights. On the other hand, another way to conceptualise children's rights, the void of the young person. What does the person do? What decisions do they need to be able to make? What they need to be able to make? It's a good decision. Sometimes the idea of rights as the voice of the young person, the idea of right, the best interest of the young person, don't always shut that jump up against each other, and often can happen in child protection circumstances where the mandatory report kind of requirements can be kind of disempowering. It seems to take visions out of the hands of children and young people. Of course, when that rages, that's a problem. Children don't have all the information. They'll develop needs to protect, needs to look out for their best interests. Their voice is important. The voice is under consideration because they haven't got anything that they need, all the resources that they need to be able to make decisions of their own. So this is a kind of a tension that we will find between child-focused approaches and child protection because of the different concepts of children's rights. I mean, one of the ways we can within our kind of legal and organisational reporting obligations look after and live to that is this idea of, that we'll talk about in more detail later of confidentiality statements. This idea that we can give young people and children clear information up front about what's going to happen. They talk about this or say this, they share the kind of information that gives young people an idea of what will happen next. They do things, some government, some resources to make good decisions around that. Yes, this is pretty important, but it is interesting that you talk to many workers, chaplains working in the field, that this is something that's come up in enough time to tension between, I didn't really want to report, I really should, but I can't report, I really shouldn't go about doing that. And there's only a lot more we could say about that. We really have that much in the space to do that in a little video lecture. Oh, we just about that, I forgot to click the button, or just keeping on. One final things there at the end of this talk, and again I recommend that you just watch, or you watch this with the actual written topic learning guide on the video. A little scenario about James, and I won't do a book, it takes a lot to do that. I'm going to get to read yourself. Basically, looking at this situation with poor old James, the difference between going on family, he has to put, but also has to do, but probably loves and hates about all of that, and watches him, and but might look and not see anything so. So there's a complex situation, but good to know to have read of. Is it kind of highlighting these complexities. And when you read that, we're asking you to reflect on the issue. What is the James the child in this terrible situation? What decisions should be made by him? What decisions should be made by others? What health support we need to make good decisions? What decisions might have to be made by us in the so we're looking at ideas here is Ross, and how is his voice going to be heard? How is this interest going to be upheld? The relationship in these things going to in this particular case. So just to sum up, some things we've looked at in this topic. Child-focused approaches coupled with the core value of youth of the primary class. So you think to one, think about what that means to be listening and considering, work on the perspective and wishes of young people much as do that, hearing the voice, also being aware of their interests and bring those things together somehow in practice in this difficult area of child protection. And we need to consider the implications of focused approach in dealing with child protection issues. Great article which you'll have cat for your assessment task for the week, which really draws out some of these and these ideas and some of these principles really well. So basically from here, I encourage you to move from the lecture into your assessment tasks. This one, look at the conventional rights, so just get you thinking a bit about on the global picture on children's rights, and then the second one, we'll look at this idea of child-centered approaches and look at some specific ideas and get you thinking about what that means in terms of child protection. So yeah, we've got something like that. So make sure you've got your video here and your version there, and yeah, you get to those SS tasks. Right.